We'll go ahead and get started. We're going to cover fundamentals of HTML in this lecture. We've already covered a lot of fundamentals, but we will continue. The code that I'm going to write is going to be in the homework chapter 3 folder. So let me open that up with Visual Studio Code. And I'll just open up the index page, which is empty. I'll get my little bare bones HTML document going here, and we'll get into it. And so a lot of this is just fundamentals of HTML. And so some new things here that we have not covered are this concept of a block element and an inline element. We have not talked about the div tag. Really, we haven't talked a lot about the span tag or the strong tag or BR or EM. You might have used these already, but we'll talk about them a little bit more. The title and the meta elements, we'll break those down a little bit more. Special characters like non-breaking space and the copyright symbol. So there's certain characters in HTML that you have to code with certain keystrokes, and we'll show those. We did introduce IDs and classes. Titles are new, so we'll hit that. Again, we'll talk about divs, and we'll talk about semantic elements a little bit more. I did introduce these yesterday with header, footer, main, section, but there are a few more that we didn't talk about. A little bit more about links, be it absolute links or relative links. These are just terms for the types of links that exist, basically internal to your website or external to your website. What are you linking to? And then root relative links and document relative paths. And so a little bit more about links that we haven't covered. Again, images and links. New topic. We haven't talked about much yet, but we will talk a lot about accessibility in this class. And, you know, off the top, what are we talking about when we make a website accessible is that we want to code our sites in ways that people with disabilities can still access the information. And there's all sorts of disabilities out there, from vision impairment to motor skills and cognitive impairments. And so there's all sorts of disabilities. And so we want to be mindful of how we code our websites to account for people who still need access to the information that we are putting out there. And some lists. Okay. Title and Fave Icon. So Fave Icon is new. Title is not new. So let's talk a little bit more about the title. This is my website title. And up until today, we said, hey, this is where the title goes in the tab in your web browser. It also turns out that the title is what is on the favorites bar. For example, you know, run coaching in Detroit, brave running. If I go to this website and I inspect, and I go to this website's title, look what I find. Run coaching in Detroit, brave running. And so that's another place where the title is used, is in the favorites of your websites. So that's another place. Now, probably and arguably more important than both of these things. So there's actually something that's more important than those two things. And those are, you know, those are like, okay, I understand that's how the title is used. But Google uses the title tag to understand what your web page is about. Well, let's not understate the importance of Google. Google needs to understand our site so that it can direct traffic to our site, right? So Google has, as we all hear, you know, on YouTube, there's the YouTube algorithm, right? Which is just software that's written that says, okay, I'm going to recommend these videos. It's the same thing with Google. There's the Google algorithm that's going to recommend websites. If Google's going to recommend your website, it needs to understand the content of your website, what your website is about. Keep in mind what Google's trying to do is match what people are searching for with web pages that have those answers. So the title is really critical on every page to be unique, okay? Unique titles for the content of that page, okay? A lot of time what you're going to do is you're going to do keyword research. And so you're going to go out to Google, and if you're doing this properly, you're going to use Google AdSense and basically research the keywords that people are searching for on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. You want to find what people are searching for, and if your web page is about that topic, you want that to be in your keywords, not only in your page, not only in the paragraphs and in the headings and in the lists and in the footer, right? But you definitely want those keywords, if they're applicable, in the title, because the title is very important, that says this is what my page is all about. Okay, so in the real world, if you're trying to get people to visit your site so that you can sell more widgets, you're doing this properly, you're doing keyword research, you're finding what people are searching for, and if your page is about those topics, then that's what you're putting in your title. So title's massively important, okay? For that specific purpose. You want to drive people to your site using keywords in the title. There's also these meta tags that I kind of gloss over. Although I've explained this to my class once before, this basically says that we're using Unicode as our encoding system to translate the English words that we're writing into binary bits that the processor can understand. Both of these tags right here are used for what's called responsive web design. And it just turns out that as we continue to learn HTML and learn CSS, we're not designing for one device anymore. It used to just be like a standard monitor was this resolution, this many pixels wide, this many pixels high, and you could just design for like the monitor that everyone had in their house. Of course, nowadays we have to design websites for mobile. And oh, by the way, there's a million mobile devices. And oh, by the way, they can all be landscape and they can all be portrait. And now you've got web browsers in your car, and you've got web browsers in your refrigerator, and you've got web browsers. And so you just really you've got to design and develop your website for an infinite number of devices. And that's what responsive web design is all about. And we will learn a lot about responsive web design, but for now, if our websites are going to be responsive, these are basically meta tags that are required. They're not optional, they're just 2 tags that we have to put in there, and without these tags, our websites will not be responsive. Okay, so that covers these 3 meta tags. The next thing is this fun little icon called a Fave Icon. You'll notice the thing about a Fave Icon is it is a picture, but it typically has a file extension of ICO. And these are just kind of fun little things. Again, these are also on your Fave bar. So if I kind of come into here and I could tell this website had a Fave Icon and this website had a Fave Icon, right? Hustle, run, thrive. There's your Fave Icon. Right, so it also goes on the Fave bar, so you can tell what sites do and what sites don't have a Fave Icon. How do you make a Fave Icon? Well, I use a Fave Icon generator, and this one's pretty good. This one can take a picture into an icon. It could take text into an icon or an emoji into an icon. Let's just take some text. And because my initials are EG, I just want the fave icon of EG. That's my fave icon. And you're going to see a couple of things here. I'm going to walk you through this process, though. Now that I've got my preview, this is what I want. Maybe I want it to be red, sure. Maybe I want the font color to be, red and yellow. All right. Wait a minute. What font do I want?
I got a quick question.
Yeah, this is really, you're interrupting some really important stuff here. What's up?
Does the icon have to be, it has to be 16 by 16 pixels, right?
Yeah, there are requirements about the size of the icon. Like you'll notice here, 16 by 16, 32 by 32. It boils down to it's got to be a really small image.
Could I just take an image, throw it in Photoshop, and like condense it to 16 by 16 and then convert it to ICO? Or do you have to use like a generator?
You could use other tools, yes. Just be careful because converting, if you're using Photoshop, Photoshop's pretty good about converting between data types, so that should work. You just can't, in other words, you just can't right-click an image and then rename it to ICO. That won't work. But if you're using Photoshop, that should work. I'm going to go ahead and download this. Notice it's downloading a zip, right? So let me go ahead and put this into my repository. And this was in my homework chapter 3. So I'm just going to save the zip folder. And I'm going to click on extract all and extract. Okay, so here's all my files, but notice they're in a Fave Icon IO folder, right? Which is a different folder than my homepage. My homepage is in the root, if you will, and this is a subfolder with all the files in it. So if I kind of go back here to my Fave Icon generator, they're pretty good about giving you a path, but this probably needs to be updated. So I'm going to copy this, and you're going to notice this is again for different devices that can use different pictures. It'll try and load this one first, and then it'll try and load that one next, that one third. But I'm going to copy that little chunk of code and paste. And now what you have to do is you have to fix the path here. And so the href, let me format this. Format, I need to use beautify. Okay. So again, it doesn't like the tags like that. It's fine. I'm going to update the path. And now you notice if I type in fave icon slash, now what did I delete? This is the Apple Touch icon. So I need a link to my Apple Touch icon. So if I start typing fave icon slash, and I go to the Apple Touch icon. So this, we'll talk about this, says go to the root, which this is basically not a good path because our icons are not in the root being the chapter 3 homework folder. That's what I have opened. So because these pictures are not in the root, so I got to update my path. And they're in this Fave Icon, and this is my 32 by 32, and this is my Fave Icon 16 by 16. And I really don't need this line here. Basically, the device that the user is on, it'll either load this one or this one or this one. It'll pick from one of the three, and now you've got a Fave Icon working. Right? And so, you know, if you want to break this down a little bit more, this tag, it goes in the head. It is a link tag. These are all attributes. The rel attribute says that this is an icon, which was really a small image. This particular type of image is a ping. And the sizes, again, this is going to tell the web browser to load this size. if it's compatible with, if the web browser can have an icon in those dimensions. And so that just helps it load the right icon for that device. Yes?
Normally when we have to do sizes on images, we tell it by pixels. Does the browser just know that it's referring to pixels in that case?
Correct. Absolutely right. Yeah, so the browser just knows that this is pixels. It's kind of the same thing with the height and width attribute. You just put 100 and it just knows pixels. Yeah. So there's your Fave icon, and that's how it's used, and so that's new, and I would say that's pretty, useful. You want to know how to do that. There are, really interestingly, 2 other meta tags that we have not covered, or I should say we've covered the meta tag, but not its different attributes, right? This is the name attribute of description. So let's talk about meta description, meta name description. Again, I like to kind of go to, if I search for League of Legends, take a look at this little text right here. League of Legends is a team-based game with over 140 champions. Where does that sentence come from? Well, you might have guessed that if I scroll into here and find the meta description, meta description, where are you? There it is, meta description. Take a look at the content. League of Legends is a team-based game with over 140 champions to make blah, 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 play for free. So this is the meta description tag, and that's one of the ways that it's used. Now, historically, meta descriptions were also used by the Google algorithm to tell Google more about your page. That has kind of fallen out of favor because people started doing what was called Google bombing, where they were faking out Google. The terms Google bombing and Google washing refer to the practice of causing a website to rank highly in search engine results for irrelevant, unrelated, or off-topic search terms by linking heavily. In other words, they would put a description that their page wasn't really about, and it kind of became this thing where people figured out that if you search for certain keywords, like miserable failure, the top result was biography of President George W. Bush.
That's pretty funny.
Right? So Google wanted to make their algorithm not get faked out, and so because of that, they kind of have leaned off of the meta keywords and meta descriptions in their algorithm a little bit because they were getting faked out, if you will, Google bombed by doing this. So again, what this is a meta tag. Name is description, and content attribute equals, this is a paragraph to describe your page. It should be a well-written paragraph that can be used by Google and include keywords that will be used to optimize your page for search engine optimization. I started getting some typos, but it's a paragraph, and it's a well thought out paragraph that has keywords in it and all this kind of stuff. Okay, the other one, meta name of keywords. Content is This is a list of keywords that you want users to search for your site. So if I want to make a site about Evan, like what are people searching for? If they just search my name, comma, who is Evan Gudmestead, comma, like what are the search phrases that people are actually searching for? What does an attractive male look like? Just kidding. What are people searching for Evan? Rankin teachers. You know, what
So,
are the
like,
key...
What if, like, instead of ranking teachers, you just put, like, you know, MIT teachers and, like, just lie?
That's exactly why the algorithm doesn't use this as much anymore.
You probably put like your YouTube channel in there too.
Yeah, maybe your Evan Gudmestead YouTube.
So this was, like, how they were Google bombing.
This is, yeah, using these two things together. Actually, I believe it was more the keywords that was used in the description, which kind of makes sense. The description, I showed you how that's used, but the keywords would be an easier way. Like again, if I just listed myself as an MIT teacher, that's an easy fake out, right?
Yeah.
So these are the meta tags, description and keywords. And again, these should be in every real world website. Every live site on the internet should have these because they are used by Google in different ways, and you know, it's important. So again, SEO. Again, SEO stands for search engine optimization. You're building a website that's friendly to Google, that Google can understand. Always include the title. It should accurately describe the page content. The title should include 1 or 2 keywords. It should be interesting enough to entice the reader to click on it when it shows in the search results of the search engine. Clickbait, right? Now we're getting into clickbait. The title should be used for each unique page on your website, right? So every page should be unique. And you're going to limit the title because they don't show anything too much more than 65 characters. Okay, so you're not going to have some title. Like if I were to go to rankin.edu, I think they've got some really long title on their homepage because they are trying to optimize with keywords. And so if I go to Rankin, maybe it's 65, maybe it's less. But, oh, I lied. Their titles, not exactly. Well, but there are keywords, right? Technical college, like when people search for tech college or trade school. Like the best tech schools, this is the description, right? So people will search for tech schools in Missouri, and so we are optimizing for keywords.
Actually, why are the meta tags written that particular way, where they have this meta and then property? Because it's not the same as, you know, meta and description or meta and keyword.
So a lot of this has to do with, you can kind of see the locale. So, yeah, there's a lot of other meta tags that we haven't covered, is essentially what John is saying. And what are these used for? I mean, obviously Twitter card, Twitter. I am curious about the meta property attribute. Meta property attribute. The meta property is similar to the meta tag. We talk about different editions of HTML. Whoop, go away. So basically, meta property comes in use to basically link the elements in the body tag as long as they contain a property tag. And basically, the body tag is the main parent tag, meta property to link another tag in the body. I don't think that's well written at all. I don't know is the answer. Because yeah, looking at a lot of these, there are other meta tags.
I'm guessing maybe they don't necessarily have anything to do with search engine optimization. Is it they're there for a separate purpose?
That might very well be. Let me make a note and I'll look into that a little more. Notepad. So the question that I'm going to look into a little bit more is this meta property attribute. It's a good question. I don't know. I will look into it. All right. Close, 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 close. Guidelines for the meta tags include the description for each page, so meta description. The description should summarize, remember the meta description is the paragraph. The description should summarize the contents of the page. It should be unique for the page, and it can be longer than the title, right? So it's a paragraph, it's more than 65 characters. It should encourage users to click on your link. Covered that. Include the keywords. We covered that. You know, they do use a limit, so you're not spamming your meta description with keywords. You know, you're looking for about 10 keywords or phrases for the meta keywords. All right. Okay, moving on to some more HTML. Did you notice let's look at an anchor tag, for example. And I did this Did you notice that anchor tags are all on the same line? In other words, anchor tags do not cause line breaks. But if I put a paragraph tag, okay, well, all of a sudden the paragraph is on a new line. And so it turns out there are some elements in HTML cause line breaks, others do not. That just makes sense. Anchor tags are an example of an element that doesn't cause a line break. These are given the category name of inline elements. So, in short, inline elements do not cause line breaks. Another good example of an inline element is an image tag. If I find an image, again, I'll just go to Google and I'll search for, what was the last thing on my, I searched for Lake County, Illinois, oddly enough. And if I copy image address, I just found some random image. Whoop, that's not. I don't think that's going to work. It's not actually giving me, oh, it is working. Okay. Notice that an image, like I could put behind the image, I could put another link. By the way, if you link to a pound symbol, it's like a dummy link, right? So it doesn't link anywhere. So a pound symbol is a dummy link. So links and images, for example, do not cause line breaks. That's the category of inline elements. The opposite of inline would be considered block. Block elements are the category of elements that do cause line breaks. And so you can look at things like headings, paragraphs. Okay? And if you inspect, right-click Inspect, and you can click on this little Inspect tool, you can actually see that there's some space. I mean, clearly you can see the white space. But that space right there is called margin. And so margin is space between elements. And you can see that there's actually space on top of the heading and on bottom of the heading. And that shared space, a lot of that space is shared. The margin on the top of the paragraph is shared with margin on the bottom of the heading. So that's kind of interesting, like that space overlaps a little bit. So margins can sometimes be shared between these block level elements. And that just makes sense, that space is shared. But you notice the margin on the top of the paragraph doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the heading. It's close, but no cigar. Now that heading does go all the way to the top of the paragraph. So there's more, let's see, 16 pixels of margin on the bottom. And, well, it also says 16 on top. Yeah, so there's 16 pixels between these two. And they're just shared. Okay. You guys with me between the difference between block elements that cause line breaks and inline elements that do not? So headings are block, paragraphs are block. You know, we'll cover more. When it comes to your heading tags, again, I've covered that heading tags, this is a heading. Consider adding important keywords here. And so the keywords that you use, let's just say you're trying to optimize for the keyword great school, right? You're going to put the words great school in your description. You might put it in your keywords. And you might put it in your heading. What you're looking to do when you have a good keyword that you're trying to optimize for is you're trying to sprinkle it across your web page. Okay, you might put it in the alt attribute of a picture of the school. Okay, and so really what you're trying to do is you're trying to sprinkle it, and I use the term sprinkle appropriately, and I'm not talking about a heavy sprinkle, right? I'm just talking about what I'm really boiling it down to is about 7 to 10 times on a page. So you could use the word or phrase great school 7 times across this individual page. You know, Google's really going to understand you're trying to optimize for the word great school. And so a heading is a good place for keywords. It takes a high priority. The title tag is probably one of the highest priorities, one of the highest weightings. Headings are also very highly ranked and highly weighted as far as where you want your keywords to go. Paragraphs as well, but obviously paragraphs are not as important as headings. Alt attributes are not as important as headings. Headings are important. Always use an H1 to identify the most important information, and then generally what you do, like the standard, is you're supposed to decrease your headings one at a time. So as you go down the page, the information should get less important. So in H2, less important than the H1. In theory, you're just going to go down the page and your headings are going to get smaller. Less important than the H2. Okay, and that's the best practice. Now, a lot of developers don't do this, but this is kind of what Google recommends. You kind of want your headings to be like your table of contents, if you will, on the page. Like I think of Wikipedia. So whenever you have a topic, this is like your table of contents. And so you start with the most important information up at the top in the H1, and then the H2, and then the H3, and the H4, and the H5, and the H6 as you go down the page. Information just gets less important. And so these are like the topics of your page. So that's what headings are really used for, the topics of your page. And again, in theory, they're supposed to go from most important to least important. I will tell you, in practice, you don't see that a lot out there, but that's how it's supposed to be. Don't use headings as a way to make big text. Instead, use CSS. So if all you're trying to do is make text big, use CSS. You want to use headings as the topic of the section. You know, a table of contents, if you will. Okay, block quotes, a block level tag. Paragraphs are block level tags. This pre-tag we'll get into, the address tag. These are all block level elements. And remind me, what do block level elements mean? Someone in the audience? There's only a handful.
Describe a quote, right?
2 people answered at once. John?
They cause line breaks.
They cause line breaks. Is that what you said, Vinny?
No. I was referring to a block quote.
Right. So the question is block elements, which is the title of this tag. What are block elements? And the answer is, well, they are any element that causes a line break. Now to answer what you were saying, what is a block quote? A block quote just causes an indent. And so if I kind of look at a block quote, whoops, I did not mean to do that. You could see really just the block quote is pushed over a little bit. If you inspect it, you could see there's margin on the left of my block quote. Everything else is left-hand justified. That's pushed over a little bit. Okay, block elements cause line breaks. Left off on this slide, and I want to talk briefly. You know, this slide kind of takes me into a path of like, okay, what are these tags? And these are inline elements. Is kind of the point of these tags. You know, what are inline elements? Inline elements, again, they do not cause line breaks. So EM, if you look at an EM, it makes it italicized. So it's a you won't pass, right? That's your EM. Strong makes it bold. Now anyone who studied the old HTML says, wait a minute, wasn't there a B tag and an I tag that did the same thing, made it italics? And the answer is yeah, there was another tag, and they kind of remade this new tag, and so they both work. One of them just works better. Turns out that these, the EM and the strong, work better than the B and the I of the old days. And the reason EM and strong are considered better, again, is for that accessibility purpose. When a screen reader would read some text that is a strong tag, it would actually embolden the voice of the screen reader, and you know, make some sort of italicized emphasis, if you will, in the voice. I don't know exactly what it would sound like, but that's the idea, is that the EM and strong are better tags for screen readers. KBD, keyboard, keyboard is what this tag is, and basically makes it look like a typewriter. And the way that this is typically used is when you're writing a web page and you want to show like what code looks like. If you want to write like a body tag, you would put the body tag inside of KBD, and it would look like a typewriter, so it stands out. So like, hey, I'm actually writing code. Sub is just a tag that makes the text go down, a subscript, if you will. And then Q is for quotes. So again, those are all considered inline elements. Character entities are really interesting because remember I said that just adding all these spaces here doesn't really do anything? Or better yet, let me add the spaces after the word less important than the H1. And so literally that doesn't do anything. However, there is a special, this is not a tag, NBSP. It's called a special character, and that is a non-breaking space. And so one way of moving things over, even though this is not the right way of moving things over, is non-breaking spaces. Again, you really don't want to do this. Instead, you want to learn CSS. But that's what non-breaking spaces are. They move things over on the page at one space at a time. Not really what you want to do. If you wanted to type an angle bracket, like if I have a paragraph and I wanted a less than to be shown, like it'll even show you that that's not good. Because anytime it sees an angle bracket, it thinks that this is the beginning of a tag. And it's like, no, that's not right. So what you want to do is, again, when you see the ampersand symbol, less than, that's a special character. So when I see ampersand and a semicolon, when I see ampersand anything special, a semicolon, this screams special character. And the reason they're special characters is that the browser won't understand them properly otherwise, in most cases. Okay? In order for the browser to see the less than symbol, then you need to code ampersand LT for less than. There's a short list of common non-breaking space, right quote, left quote, again, this is like a single quote, right single quote, copyright symbol, the actual ampersand sign itself. Okay, this gets a bunch of special characters. Now the single quote is kind of interesting because use the ITS, right? ITS, IT apostrophe S. A lot of browsers are savvy enough to do that. So the special character is actually not needed because most browsers can figure it out. But the reason it exists is because not all browsers are savvy enough to figure it out. So what you would say is the browser compatibility isn't always there. So it is considered a best practice to still use the right single quote, RSQUO, RSQUO, ampersand, RSQUO semicolon, and there you go. For the apostrophe S.
I got something strange when I was doing the labs.
Yeah.
The code was highlighting the apostrophes in some of the text I had copied into the. I can share it with you.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look at it. But basically, yeah, a lot of times Visual Studio might bark at you because it wants you to use these special characters instead. So John's going to share his screen real quick and we can take a quick look. Gonna hop over.
Did I see it? Oh.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. Yeah. And so what is it? And if you hover over it, what does it say? This character can be confused with that. So a lot of times when you're copying from one source and pasting, it says the character that could be confused with that, which is more common in source code. So go ahead on one of them and delete the quote and just type your own single quote. And so that's basically what it's saying. Believe it or not, maybe you're aware of this, but in all the different ways that you could type a single quote, there's more than one. Okay. So if you go to the char map on your computer, if you go to the character map, I mean, there is just a very large number of characters, and there's more than one single quote that's available to us. And so, I don't know, something. There's just more than one. And so the single quote that one application uses, like Microsoft Word single quote, might not be the same single quote in Visual Studio, is what it boils down to. And so that's why that's barking at you. There's basically different single quotes. Okay. Yep. Let's go back to my live stream. I'll disconnect from yours. You guys can hop back in on mine. Back to the PowerPoint. Yesterday I covered, hey, the language is English. You want to put this attribute on the HTML tag. It is, let's see. It is there by default using Emmet's template. Again, I always make the point that there's really no other option besides English to code HTML in, but, it's supposed to be there. We did talk about, and it's important to reiterate this because it's important, an ID can be placed on any element to uniquely identify that element on the page. A class can be placed on any element to group elements on a page. And so like I could say class of blue text, and I'll add class of blue text I'll add it on a heading, and I'll add it on a paragraph. Class of blue text. Right, so I've got this class on multiple elements, and then I kind of come up into my CSS, target a class with a dot, blue text, color blue, and I've changed my heading and my paragraph to blue. Title is a unique one that you could put on any element that gives you kind of a hover effect. Let me put on... Let's see, I put it on the H2, less important than the H1. Oh, here we go. Right, so you could put a title, and it's basically like a tooltip. I believe that's what that's called, a tooltip. And it's just kind of, it could be user-friendly on different things, different images or what have you. Put the title attribute on anything. There's your tooltip. Okay. Someone remind me yesterday we covered the two functions of HTML. What is HTML used for? What are the two functions of HTML? I'm gonna get someone online to answer me. call on somebody.
Wasn't it to do with like structure and position?
Structure, beautiful. The structure of a page, what's up at the top, what's at the bottom, what's on the side. And not the, I think you said style? Structure is one, what was the other?
Like header footer?
Well, the header footer is structure, that is correct. But I described like the images and the paragraphs and the headings all as one thing. Structure and content. Remember that? HTML is used for structure and content. So if I want something to go at the top, I put it in a header tag. If I want something to go at the bottom, I put it in a footer tag. If I want something to go off to the aside, I put it in the aside tag. If I want it to be the main content, if I want it to be a nav bar, you put it in nav. Now check this out. This is something that's kind of good to you to learn. So all of these tags, how many tabs did I code? 5. There's 5 tags. These are all structural tags. And what I mean by that is they just define like where on the page this content's supposed to go. What's the structure of the page? You know, again, I think of the structure like housing framing. Like you're framing the house, you're building the, where is the kitchen? Where's the roof? Where's the bedroom? Where's the bathroom? You're framing a house. We are framing a web page here with these tags. These are all structural tags. Really interesting to see what this looks like. All right. First observation, these tags don't really do much. Would you all agree? Like they all basically look the same way. It's kind of like we got our 2x4s, but we haven't nailed anything together yet. Like we just got our wood. And when we have our tags like this, we got a bunch of 2x4s, we got our wood, but we haven't nailed them together yet. To get the footer to go to the bottom, and to get the nav to the way we want it, and we want the aside and the main, we have to use CSS. CSS is for style. The style of the page. What are the colors? What is the positioning? Style and positioning. So CSS is for style. HTML is for structure and content. Now, we have all these structural tags, and by themselves, they're not really too fancy. I guess the other observation to make is they're all what level elements? Are they block or are they inline? Are they causing line breaks or are they all in the same line? I mean, clearly they're causing line breaks. They're not all in the same line. So because these are all causing line breaks, they are all block level elements. So just an observation that might make you scratch your head is this really, like, in other words, check this out. I could, if I wanted to be incorrect about it, I could do the footer up there. And like, well, the footer's at the top. That doesn't make any sense, but you could do it and it would work, but that's not the point. The point is that the footer should be at the bottom. But like, what do these tags actually do for us? Well, when you start getting into like all these different devices, it's just a way of having a tag that we know that, generally speaking, this should make the content in it should be at the top of the page, at the top of the device. Whether that device is a phone in tablet view or desktop, this should be up at the top. There's also another tag called div. This is a generic block level element. So the div tag is a generic. So if you've got like a a section of content that doesn't really belong in the header, nav, aside, main, footer, historically you would always just put things in divs. And so div is basically the same as all of these, but it's just more generic. Like footer we know should go at the bottom. No, I don't know where a div goes. A div can go anywhere, right? It's just generic. It's just a block level element. You could put anything inside of it. All right. All of these are considered semantic tags, right? You call them semantic. What semantic means is that the tag describes what's in it. If the tag describes what's in it, then it's considered semantic. And most HTML tags, we want them to be semantic. We want them to describe what's in it. But more specifically, these are structural tags that define the structure. Real quick, I want to show you guys something. We're covering a lot of tags today. On your course, because I wanted to give you a reference to all of these tags, like in a quick reference, I made a summary of all of this. And it's called the handout right here. There's a lot of the common HTML tags, right? Main, header, footer, DL, LI, UL, span, div, images, strong, emphasize. These are all, this is like 95% of what you'll need in HTML. Like I should just make the first test, just memorize all these or be familiar with these. Because, I mean, this is 95% of the HTML that's out there. I'm making up the percentage, but you get the point. These tags, like figure and fig caption, this is a way to take a picture. Let me undo all of this and bring back what I had before. What I had before, I had this image. I'm just going to bring the image back. And there's my now the figure is just this image, right? And you'll notice the fig caption is within the figure tag. And so I'll add the fig caption. This is a dump truck. And so not a whole lot going on here. But what this does semantically is it associates this text with this image. And again, when we have all these different devices that can view this code in all these different ways, if there's a piece of text that's associated with an image, then we want to keep those two things together. And using this figure tag with fig caption does just that. It basically marries these two things together so that we know they're associated. And so that's figure and fig caption. In the slideshow, they basically do the same thing with a code block, with a caption that's associated with that code block. So this caption is associated with that code block. This is how pages used to be made. Instead of having the header tag, you had a div with an ID of header, and a div with an ID of main, and a div with an ID of footer. This actually caused some issues in the industry because, well, number one, we're looking at 3 different div tags, and pages would have probably hundreds of div tags. You would have the problem, they coined it as div overload. Like you just had too many div tags, and it became hard to work with. So having these semantic tags like header, footer, aside, and main really helped. we're kind of reaching the end of today. I'm going to pause the recording right here. We've been lecturing for about an hour and a half. And recording time, is about an hour. So we took that break in there. But I'm gonna stop the recording here. I'm gonna resume this tomorrow.